Welcome to episode 105 of Nintendo Therapy, a show about the latest Nintendo news and rumors, as well as the celebration of all things Nintendo. My name is Kevin, and joining me this week for some Nintendo Therapy is Sean
Hello.
and Harrison.
Glad to be here. Welcome back.
Yeah, and I'm glad to be here. Glad to have some room to vent some Nintendo Therapy stuff that's been going on in the news this week. Has everybody been paying attention to their Nintendo news?
Off
As
and
much
on.
as there is.
The thing that I thought was most funny in the news this week, I'll jump right into it, is that there were like two conflicting Banjo Kazooie headlines. I don't know if you saw either of these. Um, So first, Moon Studios, who doesn't even have anything to do with Banjo Kazooie, they're just another game developer. But Moon Studios CEO said in an interview that he believed a Banjo Kazooie game could rival 3D Mario in sales. That's the kind of clickbaity headline because he didn't actually said that. He said it could probably do similar numbers. Um,
I was
but
gonna say similar maybe. I can't see, Odyssey numbers.
But the funny thing is that was followed up like a week later by the composer for Banjo-Kazooie in a separate interview mentioning he has zero hope of seeing a new Banjo game and says fans would hate it. So
Wow, that all right.
it was just funny that there were just two conflicting Banjo-Kazooie news stories about a week apart. And I have to say, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think a new Banjo-Kazooie game, as long as it wasn't bad, would do just fine. There's plenty of built-in audience there, plenty of people curious enough, and it's also not a title where you need to know the whole history. You could just jump right in. So, yeah, I think it would do somewhere in the middle. If they made a decent enough game, I don't think it would set the world on fire, but I don't think it would lose the money either.
That's why I was really disappointed when Toys for Bob went away or out of business or whatever, because I thought they'd be perfect to do a new Banjo.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I,
I
I,
think as long as you did a
I
decent game, it would do fine. Just don't do nuts and bolts again.
Yeah.
I forgot who was the first person. Who was the first person that said it's gonna sell better than it's like a Mario game?
It was the CEO of Moon Studios. What was it? Um, Yeah, Moon Studios is the name of it.
I
So
can't even
they
remember.
make Ori and Will of the Wisps are two games they've made.
Oh, all right. So they're linked with Microsoft. So I guess it
Yeah.
makes sense that they'd give an opinion.
It,
Well, yeah, I'm sure that's how it came up during the interview.
I just want to say that I don't have any issue with like a developer, CEO, someone involved with that game making that statement, even if it's not true or not. Even if he doesn't
Yeah.
believe it, I have no problem with people them making that statement because it's like it's like your son on a basketball team, and you're like, my son is the best. It's like
Well,
that's the way that I see it.
I've always taken issue, and this comes up in every nerdy type of conversation, whether it be comic book movies or anytime you're talking about adapting anything. I take issue with the phrase "if done right" because it's like, well, of course it would work if it was done right. They did it right. Like it's a
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
nothing phrase.
Right,
So,
If it was done terribly, it wouldn't sell well. Really?
right.
yeah,
No idea
exactly.
that would happen.
Well
Yeah,
done
2008 was the last Banjo game. I didn't realize it was that long ago.
since I was in high school. Yeah. Um. s- Uh. y- Yeah. Like if done right is so subjective too, because if done right only means that if it turns out to be successful, then we can say that it was
Yeah.
done
What people
right.
usually mean when they say "if done right" is if done the way I want them to do it.
And it's
That's what they're usually
successful.
saying.
And it's
You
success.
actually reminded me of I saw a quick blurb from Reggie about Astrobot and how he
Mhm.
said Sony almost out Nintendo'd us.
Mhm.
And I'm like, all right. That's an interesting take on it. You make me want to give it a shot.
What?
The thing with Astrobot that Nintendo doesn't do often enough, in my opinion, is it had so many it wasn't just like one thing. It was like
It
constant
was a bunch
references
of
to other
Sony
Sony stuff.
references. Yeah, yeah.
And I feel like Nintendo could do that more. Like there's not like a whole lot of like F-Zero references in a Zelda game. You know what I mean? Like they could do more stuff like that. It's mainly like the top two, Mario and Zelda.
They, Nintendo has a deeper bench, and Sony's like, because I'd like to play Astrobot at some point, but I'm sure it's all like, oh, here's a reference to The Last of Us or God of War, some other really mature game. So it's just kind of like in this cutesy little platforming game. Oh, there's a hunter from Bloodborne. So Nintendo's like better set up to have Easter eggs like that fit in
Mhm.
the world of their game.
For sure.
I want to play it, and yeah, it's good to see Reggie say that, considering that the Astrobot developer shouted out Nintendo in their acceptance speech.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
Mhm.
I like when everyone plays nice, and it doesn't happen too often with Sony and Nintendo.
yeah. I like that. Last part that I'll add is I like that um, people are honest when talking about their inspiration for games.
Oh yeah.
Like I played a game recently where in the description of the game it says we were inspired by uh whatever it's called, Factorio and Forager, and they put that right in the description of the game. Uh, because why not? Because like if not, then like they're just a rip off of that game. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Um, but yeah,
There's nothing wrong when you do something and it's an homage. I mean, I know some people like Tarantino, it became too much of a shtick, so it got old really fast for me.
mm,
But when video games do it, it's usually pretty successful, especially if you're just gonna say it out front.
Yeah,
yeah,
there's so many games that I think I've said before, even on this podcast. It's like, you guys can reuse ideas that worked. I feel like a lot of franchises sometimes they'll have an awesome mechanic and then they'll never use it again just because it was in a previous version. And it's like, well, I'm glad somebody's using it if a game inspired by that game starts to use that mechanic. You know what I mean? Because they're apparently done with it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that,
Yeah,
that,
Zelda
I agree.
ripoff isn't a bad thing. Like a Zelda clone, a Zelda ripoff. Um, well, I guess if we're doing semantics, I'll say clone because ripoff sounds
Yeah.
bad. Clone isn't
You
necessarily going to
can
be
make it
bad
successful
because Zelda is good.
in the style of. That's why Phoenix Rising got a lot of love, right? It had kind of a Breath of the Wild thing going, but with Greek stuff.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. However much success that Ubisoft game had, yeah, decent success, right? Um, yeah, and that game is Breath of the Wild like crazy. Like, I mean, that was
But
pretty
it's
much
its
them
own
just trying to
thing.
make their own Breath of the Wild game for sure.
Or even Elden Ring taking that open world design a little. I mean, they still did their From Software thing, but you can see the Breath of the Wild influence, and it doesn't take away from it.
Th- They've said that, right? Like they've been vocal
Mhm.
about that,
I
haven't
believe
they?
so.
Yeah, I
Right?
think so.
Yeah.
And Ukulele does it well too, where the first game is very
Well, we
3D
think so.
Mario.
But that game has a lot of haters online that don't understand what it was doing, I guess.
Well, I don't like the first one as much, but I haven't really played the second one much, but the second one is very much Donkey Kong Country, which is
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
And I like the idea of it that they let you try the last level first, and it's impossible for you to beat until you actually progress through the game and hopefully make it easier for yourself. So that's a
Well,
cool
yeah,
idea.
don't you I haven't started playing it yet either. That's actually the next game I'm gonna tackle, but I think the mechanic is that like throughout the game you build up more hits that you can take on that final level.
Right.
So like if you're good enough right at the beginning of the game, if you could make it through the full level without taking a single hit of damage, you could technically do it.
I'm sure there's some person online who's
Oh
probably
yeah.
done that.
I'm sure there's
So
a bunch.
but again, I like that's a series I've heard rumors that we're just getting a upgraded version of the first game.
Yeah,
I
that's
kinda
probably
want
them
them.
testing the waters to see if
Yeah,
people are still interested enough to make a new one.
'cause I'd like to see a third one and see what they do with it.
Speaking of that series, though, that I'm going to start next, the reason I'm starting it next is I am finishing Brothership. I am right at the threshold. I'm at the end boss, and that was the other thing I wanted to talk about this week. Is now that I've made it through 99.9% of the game, I literally just have one boss fight left. I'm here to definitively say, for me at least, this is not a 5 out of 10 game. That that IGN score that everyone was up in arms about. It's not a 10 out of 10. I think this is the most 7 out of 10 game that has ever existed for me. Like, it is the definition of 7 out of 10. It's not bad enough to be a 6.5. It doesn't quite reach 7.5. It's right there. 7 out of 10, 70 out of 100. Um, it's not a bad game. It's just it makes a lot of weird choices, and it does have a lot of, if I was a teacher and people were handing in their Nintendo Switch game assignments and this was one of my students' assignments, I'd be like, that's a 70 right there. That is a solid 70. Most of it's enjoyable. You could have improved a bunch of stuff though.
Is
Yeah,
it a
like
good starting point? Because I've never played the Mario Luigi games.
I've only played the one that's on Switch Online, and they're pretty similar. I'd say the other one's better. Like I
Okay,
said, this it's like it makes a lot of weird choices. For instance, there's three optional super bosses in the game, but the strongest one, the recommended like level for your party to be at, is only like level 45. And this is a traditional RPG where you can level all the way up to level 100. So, not really a super boss. It's more of a boss that's too strong for that point in the story. Um, but you come back to
yeah,
it and just destroy it.
because the
Um,
Mario RPG secret boss, you have to be pretty high level for that one.
oh yeah, you need to max everything for those. And another weird thing it does is it has you collect these things at the beginning of the game that it doesn't even really tell you what it's got some pacing issues. Like stuff gets stretched out for sure. Like you collect these things, it doesn't even tell you what they do until like 2 hours or 3 hours later. Like you're pretty far into the beginning act before they're even telling you why you're collecting these things, which is really weird. And yeah, it's just I don't know. It's got some pacing issues. There's certain parts that just drag on and they just ask you to you're kind of doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like that's actually just happened to me with right before you get to the end boss. I'm not going to give any spoilers in case anyone listening wants to play it, but there's just something it makes you do before fighting the end boss. And after you've done it like 3 times, you're like, "Okay, I get it." And they make you do it like 6 or 7 times, I'm not even kidding. Um, so you just keep going through this loop and you're like, "Okay, I understand what you're trying to say here. Can we move on with the story?" So, it does stuff like that a lot, but it is fun, the mechanics are engaging, the battle is fun, good enemy designs, some good boss fights, some funny moments. I laughed out loud a few times. So, like I said, it's a 7 out of 10. That 5 out of 10 was crazy low. It's not a failed game. It's not something where I gave up in the middle and was like, this isn't worth my time.
Yeah,
Replayability.
I mean, if you oh yeah, does it have? I know you like to do everything twice.
I don't think I'll be replaying it right away, but I wouldn't be surprised if I played it again someday. I'll say it that way. I'm not like dying to play it again right now, but I could totally see myself the next time they announce a Mario RPG and I'll play through Mario RPG first. I'll play through Thousand Year Door, and then I might play this again if I'm like anticipating one.
Does it have a harder difficulty once you
I don't
beat
know
it, or
because I haven't beaten it yet, but
okay?
I don't think so. Um, that you could argue that you could just try to go through the game lower leveled. You know what I mean? If you want more difficulty.
Yeah. Your
Okay.
own
I was just
Nuzlocke.
curious because I know,
Yeah,
yeah, a lot of
exactly.
RPGs do that. I mean,
Yeah.
if you guys want my thoughts, I'm only halfway through Donkey Kong Country Returns, but I would also say it's a 7. You know, that the I know we're harping on IGN, so they gave it an 8, which I thought was one too high. Um, I mean, it's very pretty looking and it's fun, and I'm loving not having to do motion controls because, like, having to do the roll and to jump to a platform and just hit a button, oh, so nice. Instead of having
Yeah.
to shake the whole controller to do it. It's very challenging, and I feel like it's the weakest of the 5 games. Just overall, for whatever reason, it doesn't experiment, I guess, as much as the other 4 games. I'd like to see them do more than just bringing Ramby and Squawks back at each time. Like, Winky the Frog's my favorite animal buddy, and he's never been back since the first game. So they always just bring back, the Rhino. The price point thing doesn't bother me. I mean, Nintendo's still getting $60 for Breath of the Wild new.
Hmm.
It has a sequel. It was a launch game. That's just what
I,
Nintendo does.
I think with that price point, they're banking on getting a lot of people who haven't played that, who like missed out on that one but wanted to play it back in the day. You know.
Yeah. So, I mean,
And
I recommend it if you wanna play it and you enjoy them. Like I said, I'm about halfway through it. But if you don't have interest or you'd prefer to play Tropical Freeze, then play Tropical Freeze. It is a better game, but DK Returns is a perfectly good game. So I don't I mean, I've seen videos that really deep dive to the point where I'm like, "Wow, you have a lot of time to find the minute details that look visually different from the Wii one to the HD one, where the HD doesn't look quite as good right here." And I'm like, "That's what you're looking at? That little stalactite in the background instead of what you're doing?" So I don't know, some people are crazy, but I've been enjoying it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very interested in seeing how this one sells. If they're gonna do 1,000,000, if they're gonna do more than that. I'm very interested in seeing how much interest there is in this game and
it
whatever that
debuted at
leads
number
to.
one in Japan
Yeah.
so far, so it's selling decent.
2024. I wanted to say on Kevin's part, I really think we're gonna remember 2024 as just like a very, very solid year of gaming, just with no
Yeah,
like, I guess depending on who you
stand out.
are, there's like no like huge like bangers that year. It was just a
Yeah.
year where we had a lot of games that we enjoyed, but a lot of sevens, I
Yeah,
guess.
Yeah,
yeah.
Um,
exactly. Yep.
and Sean, I don't want to veer off too much, but I've been thinking a lot about price point this week.
Yeah.
With the news, with the GTA $100 American news, because
It'll be
The
40
sad
bucks
thing
by
is
the time I get to playing it.
it'll be less than that for me. Um,
they'll get that. Is the crazy thing to me.
well, I'm sure they will because people are like, well, it's been 10 years, I blah blah blah, and I've and I'm sure like people who have GTA 5, that's a great investment. You could spend $100 on GTA 6 and get your money's worth out of it. I'm sure. I'm sure of that.
I'm sure
But
you could, it's just like, I fell out of the genre.
it's just the fact that like they're doing it mainly because they know they can do it, which was, if anything, like if I had any criticisms of the price point of Tears of the Kingdom, that was it. Like, it's $70
Yeah.
because there's a lot of content, but we are going to pay it. Like, we're
Mhm.
I
not going to
don't
avoid that game because of $10. So
that's still the only $70 Switch game, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and they made a point at the
Not
time
not
to
for
say
long
this
though.
isn't going to be the trend going forward. They did say like, "Hey guys, don't freak out. We're not gonna start making all our games $70 now." Um,
Yeah.
It was kind of an odd choice, but you're right. They knew they could get it.
they
I
claim the
mean,
reason was the long development time, which I guess is the same thing with GTA 5.
But we have
I think with
we have the long developments
GTA,
with like so many other games, though.
Yeah, I mean, Breath of the Wild had a long development time, but whatever.
Yeah.
GTA, I think is more just, hey, this is going to be the highest selling thing, period.
Hmm.
Because it always
Right.
is. Every launch, they break their own record. So
Right. Yeah, it's not going to matter. It's going to break records no matter what price point they put on it. And I mean, I think about my friends. Like, I have friends that play GTA Online, Call of Duty. That's it. That's it. And it doesn't
Mhm.
even matter what system they're playing it on. Which to veer off again, I kind of hope Switch 2 has Call of Duty. I never play it. It would not be my
Yeah,
audience. But um, for my friends that are
I
like,
think it will.
for my friends that are
I don't
like,
see why it wouldn't.
um, I play Call of Duty, Xbox, PlayStation. I don't care. And then in a few years, they're gonna look and say, "Oh, I could play it. I could play it portable. I could play it on. And okay, I'll get a Switch. You know, why not?"
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's gonna be like that. I think we need
I think
games.
Nintendo's going to be trying to bring a lot of those type of gamers into their tent this time around.
Yeah,
So I think we'll
Yeah.
see those types of games. Yeah.
yeah. I think we
I
need
think it's
games that I find to
interesting that
be cringe.
Wii U, and I think one of the DSs had Call of Duty games.
That's right. Isn't that
Yeah.
And
right?
then
And we have Call of Duty.
Because they were trying. There was the same thing with the Wii U. The Wii U was it didn't work. But I remember when it launched. You remember with Zombie University and stuff like that. They were trying to. They said in press conferences and talked about how they wanted to get rid of their reputation as just being like a kiddie system and try to bring in more third party developers. And it turned out third parties didn't want to develop for them because they didn't like the gamepad, but they tried.
yeah. So it's I don't see them not bringing that over.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
they
it, I think it's very important.
pretty sure it's the system's not gonna sell as much as the Switch, but I think they'll possibly be able to get some new people because they'll have more options, I guess. I mean, there's tons of options on the Switch, but there's those 1 or 2 games it can't do, so those are the holdouts.
So, speaking of which, and this is my only part for today, we had rumors of price point, and then I want to get your speculation. Known leaker, I don't think we've ever talked about him on here. Called Shapazel, SH Pazel underscore Nick. He suggests that it'll be released in June, and the price point will be 449 American or 499 with the Mario Kart 9 bundle.
You
Uh,
know, I tried digging through our old show notes. I know this was a rumor that we've reported on before for that exact same price point. And I feel like it was a long time ago. It might have
It
even been
was
back in 2023, but I think Momo might have even been on that episode,
Momo
but
was there, yeah.
yeah. So I think I remember arguing that Nintendo wouldn't release a system for $500 for the base model, but I could see them doing it for the system with a game. So I believe these prices that they could totally be accurate because I mean that base model is only $100 more than a Switch, and it doesn't seem like they want to lower the price of the Switch yet. So yeah, I could believe these. I'll pay it. I'll put it that way. I'll pay it. That's probably about my limit before I'd start to say like, you know what, I don't need a game at first. But I will pay $500 for the system and the game.
so you're going
It makes
right.
sense for their price
Yeah.
points.
What was that?
It makes sense
John?
for their price points, I mean,
Oh yeah.
because that'll be the new one, and then the OLED'll be 100 cheaper, and then, the Lite is 100 or 150 cheaper. I don't know, but it makes sense.
The Switch family of systems, like
I'll
they
be
used to
different.
say with the DS.
Then I'll be different. I'll say 400. I'll say 399 and 449 for the bundle. So you save $10. And I'll predict that the new Mario Kart game will be $60 coming out.
The
That's my
only thing
prediction.
I really feel strongly about is I don't think that they will go $500 for the system with no game. That's the only thing I feel strongly about.
Well, here another prediction I have is that the after Switch 2, the next thing that we see is all digital, and then
Mhm.
I really think we're gonna get some sort of pro model. I don't know if the Switch 2. I mean, we could potentially see Switch 2 eventually have a standalone home console. I mean, we can't
Yeah.
Yeah, Switch
we
2
couldn't
could
ruin.
last longer than the Switch did
Yeah, I mean the
if they
Switch
just keep patching it to, and
like
doing stuff like that, you know?
yeah, and we don't have to change the name because the Switch Lite doesn't switch, quote
Right.
unquote. So the
Yeah.
Switch, if the Switch Pro was just like an Xbox Series S, then
Mhm.
we'll just call the Switch, call it a day, and cool, we got a home console. The other part, and I'm sorry, I said I only had one part, but now it's turning into three. Um, I wonder if we would see a dual screen for the Switch. And we can talk about it later. We've brought it up before, but
I want to.
I wonder if that patent that we talked about last year at some point would mean that we could potentially see an extra screen that you can buy and just have with your Switch 2.
Would that go into the naming convention they were throwing around of Switch Attach? Like, they call that
Well,
the
we don't
second
know that they
screen?
were throwing it around, but that was a rumor that it was gonna be
What
Okay.
called the
rumor?
Switch Attach. But you remember they filed a patent for a second screen that basically almost like the magnet Joy-Cons, now that we've seen those. It was a second screen that you could magnet snap on and then snap it off, but you could also like put it in like a I'm trying to get it on the camera here, a triangle. And you could like set it up like that, so like one screen's facing this way and one screen's facing this way, and like you could do like a two-player game like that. Um, so set it up like a little teepee for those of you who can't see the video, and have the screens facing each other opposite ways.
That's a cool idea, actually.
Yeah, who knows what we'll see in the life cycle. Uh, Again, I'll say it week after week if I need to. If if half of the people who buy a Switch 2, this is a very successful system. It
Yep.
doesn't have to do as well. It could do literally half and be um, a very big success. But yeah, I mean,
The key to their success is gonna be exactly what it was with the Switch, and it's the fact that people are gonna buy multiple consoles. Like houses are gonna buy one for each kid instead of just like a PlayStation where you only buy a single one. Um, there's gonna be people who buy upgrades every time, like you were just talking about, if they do an OLED model or if they do a Pro or if they do a docked only version, people are gonna upgrade that way. I think that's going to be just like the Switch, how they're going to make sales here.
That's basically what my family and in-laws did. Like, my niece, nephew have a Switch, then their parents have a Switch. Like,
Yep.
my wife has a Switch Lite.
Mhm.
So I think you're right.
Well, I have a Switch OLED, but I've bought four in my in the life cycle.
Me
Two
too.
lights, um, the original, and then the OLED.
My
So
wife and I have each bought two. So
yeah,
that's four for this household right there.
and
I
I'll
guess technically I bought 3, even though
yeah
I traded the OG towards the OLED, but yeah.
Hmm.
yeah, and I'll include at least where I live. The resale what was really good when because it's like an item that like people are always looking for like new or used. Like the people are always
Mhm.
are
Yeah.
always like looking for them. People who sell games will always take them because they can sell it easily. So, um, if I get a Switch 2, there will be no overlap. Is what I'm trying to say. If I get a Switch 2, my Switch OLED will be out the door before the Switch 2 arrives. Yeah, I don't.
No, I'm
I
gonna
haven't
keep
thought
my.
that
I
far ahead
actually
yet.
I jumped on Reddit and asked people, and I guess it's gonna depend on your situation, but I'm keeping my OLED either way. So
I wish I got an OLED. That's why I want this thing so bad. Is I want the bigger screen, and then when they put out an OLED, I'll buy that too.
Yeah.
right, right.
All right. Is that everybody's therapy? You got it all out? Is it time for some spotlight gaming?
Oh, I
Let's
hope
go.
so. I think we all got a bunch to say on these.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is 4 games, so it should generate a lot of conversation. This week we are shining a spotlight on the G&G series, I've seen it called online, because sometimes it's Ghosts and Goblins, sometimes it's Ghouls and Ghosts. Um, but yeah, and then you got the spin-off game in there, Gargoyle's Quest. We're doing those. So Rewind Arcade has a great history of the series. They're on YouTube. That's where you find them. So check them out. The video, it's like an hour long and it walks you through the full series, remakes, re-releases, reboots, everything. And yeah, so we'll start with Ghosts and Goblins, which came out in November 1986 on the NES. An interesting fact they had about this game is the Red Devil was actually the first character they designed for the whole series. Like even Arthur, the main character, came later. A bunch of enemies were even designed before Arthur, so I thought that was interesting. And one of the often talked about elements of the games is that you need to beat them all twice to get the true ending. And this YouTube video I watched shined a little light on this, which I thought was cool. This stemmed from an idea. So this was also an arcade game,
Yep.
and the idea early in development was that even the arcade boards weren't advanced enough to handle this, so the NES never would have been. Is that each stage was supposed to have an A and a B path, and you would choose to go either the A or the B path. And then during the second playthrough, you would be forced to take whichever path you didn't pick the first time. And I
So
thought that was
they
really cool.
the only time I know they've done this, I'll just bring it up now quick. So if you enjoy these Ghosts and Goblins Resurrections, the most recent one, uh they do that path thing where if you do one path, you do the other path the second time. Um
Apparently, some of the levels in Ghouls and Ghosts, the follow up game, some of those levels were like some of the planned out alternate paths that they just reused.
okay, that makes sense. So I mean if you enjoy these when it's on sale, because it's not cheap, but it's no, not an easy game. So but if you like these, it's worth checking out. But yeah, that's the only time I know of they've done the paths that way.
There was also a Master System version, which I wish we had Master System
Really?
games on NSO. This one seems like it's really different. It has a door that opens up to like a shop every time you get a chest. So for
Oh,
some reason, the treasure chest opens a door, which sends you into a shop. And you can buy armor and weapons inside. So that sounded really cool.
that would have been interesting. I'm wondering if you run into the magician guy in the shop, if he like curses you.
Oh yeah, I don't know who it was. I was in a Sega house growing up, so I didn't know that Super Ghouls and Ghosts wasn't the same game. Like I thought that it was just another situation of like
Yeah, yeah.
the same game on
Right.
two different systems. But Super Ghouls and Ghosts is apparently the third game in the series, even though um, all three of these basically play the same. There is an evolution there. The first two games were arcade games that were translated to the NES and then the Sega Master System and Sega Genesis. Super Ghouls and Ghosts wasn't an arcade game. It was developed specifically for the Super Nintendo, which I did not know, and I thought that was really cool when I found that out.
It's very
Which only makes me wonder, why did they stick with the doing the same levels twice thing if it was made for the console?
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting that they decided to keep hammering that home that you have to beat the full game twice.
yeah.
Because I have beaten that one with save states, but it was not enjoyable because you had to go through the same levels again.
Right. R right, yeah, I didn't get that either. It's like you're making your game longer just by saying, "You gotta do it again. You just gotta do it again."
Yeah.
Uh, so, I always look up, uh, if there's any speedrun stats that are interesting for our games. The world record, any percent of this game, Ghosts and Goblins,
Yeah.
it was broken 4 days ago, and,
Oh, wow.
By me.
yeah, by someone named JC, and he finished the game in 16 minutes, 32 seconds, is the first sub 17-minute speed run. I find it really interesting. It's not the only speed run stat I have for us, but kind of an interesting
That's
just,
crazy.
coincidence that we're doing it now. Um,
Well, I'm sure that's glitched.
what?
Sean said that's crazy, and I said, "Well, I'm sure that's like a glitched speed run. Like I'm sure that he's using some sort of tricks."
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure, sure. And a lot of the speed runs for Ghosts and Got like for these games are arcade emulators, which I have no idea
Okay.
how you like I would hate trying to like regulate that and be like, yeah, that's an official, speed run. But anyways, yeah, 4 days ago. Do you guys have um a favorite Capcom series? I don't, but I could give you my best
Mega Man,
option.
for
Mega Man?
sure. Yeah,
It's probably Monster Hunter, honestly, even though I got into it late.
And for me,
it's a good answer.
it's probably Ace Attorney. Even though I haven't played all the
Oh, that's fun.
games. Yeah, because like I'm not really a Street Fighter guy. Yeah, I'm not yeah. I guess I would say Ace Attorney, but Capcom, n- I don't play that too many games from them. Did you guys
I
play?
play a decent amount of them. They're like one of the better game companies that are third party, so
Yeah, I mean they have
I play.
Resident Evil. They can just bang those out all day long and be fine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with all of that. I would agree with all of that. And hey, well, I'm sure we'll see a lot more Capcom on the next system. So, is this a game you guys played back in the day?
The Super Nintendo Super Ghouls and Ghosts was like a staple of my
Yeah.
childhood. I never owned it, but that was one that was like a regular rental, constantly picking that one up from the local rental store for my weekend. Um the um the first game on the NES, I think I played a lot as well, but like I said, I wasn't a Sega house, so the other two games I didn't play.
Yeah, so Super Ghouls and Ghosts is definitely one my dad grabbed at the flea market, and I could never get far in it. Like I said, I've beaten it with save states, but that's it.
Mhm.
The other 2 I haven't played until they were either put in collections or on the mini consoles, so those were really the first times I had played those.
Yeah, yeah, this is not when I played when I was younger. Or I played it maybe a little bit, but I can't really remember. I mean, it has a lot of Super Mario Brothers 1 charm to it as far as
Oh
like
yeah, I
the
wrote in my
pixel
notes it's
art.
got basically the same health system. Like you take 2 hits, Mario shrinks, he loses his armor. It's
Right.
like the
Yeah.
same thing.
Right, like the pixel art, the soundtrack, it all reminds me of Super Mario Brothers, and something that I've never brought up on here, but it's the most fundamental reason why Super Mario Brothers is successful is that it's just a very good performing game. Like when you press something, it works. Uh, and I think Ghosts and Goblins, even though it's a really difficult game for me, I think it performs really well, which
Hmm.
I think added to the overall success because I went through old magazines, old articles, trying to get a sense of why this game is considered to be like one of the best games of all time or one of the most important games of all time. So I have that. It
I
is,
think I
yeah,
think the reason is definitely during the NES era. There's this phenomenon we've talked about before on the podcast where like a game that just worked
Yeah.
was like good enough. Like this game works, you know what I mean? Like you said, the controls function, you put your input in and he responds right away. Um you don't ever die feeling like the game cheated you. You always feel like it was your fault. You weren't good enough. You made the mistake. So any game that performed on that level, I think was a notch above the rest because during the NES era, there were so many games put out that just like barely functioned or were glitchy or you know were completely impossible to understand what you were supposed to do. This is clear. You move from left to right. You use your weapons. Like it's a very clear cut game. So I think that just like getting the basics right, I guess is what I'm trying to say, was a big deal in the NES era.
right, right. And still considered to be one of the best. So this one was ranked lowest for me, 57. How about you guys?
NES, because it's the hardest one and I find it the least enjoyable, is at number 85.
I had it right in the middle of my list at 50. Um, it was not the lowest rank of the four for me. I didn't enjoy Gargoyle's Quest as much as you two seem to have. So, why don't you two talk about Gargoyle's Quest for a little bit?
Or is that the next
You
one?
don't want to rank the other two Ghosts and Goblins first?
Okay, I could do. Yeah, so Ghosts and Goblins, I put at Wait, Ghosts and Goblins was the NES one. That one was at 50.
There's
Um,
a Yeah,
s-
NES and Sega have the
yeah,
same title.
The Sega version, I put at number 33, and then I like Super Ghouls and Ghosts a little more. That's at 27.
Oh,
All
wh-
right, so Super Ghouls and Ghosts, I think, is the best looking of them. I put that at 56, but I actually prefer the Sega Genesis one because you can throw your weapon in multiple directions. So I put that at 42.
Yeah, it's really weird that they
yeah,
took that out. Like, especially when like they made such a big deal about Super Castlevania, you being able to throw the whip in any direction. Which it's
Yeah,
now that I think of it, isn't it the opposite? Like, so like the Super Nintendo Castlevania game, you could throw the whip in any direction, but I think
but you
Bloodlines
can't.
you can't. So it's the opposite. That's
Yeah.
so weird.
Where do these other two fall for you, Harrison?
okay, so for Genesis, this is the right order, right? Yes, Genesis is next. Genesis Ghouls and Ghosts, I put at 51. My other speed
Okay.
run stat for you is that this any percent world record, it was broken 24 days ago, 14 minutes, 54 seconds, and then that world record lasted for less than 1 day. Because 23 days
Wow.
ago, less than a day later, it was broken by someone else in Japan, 14 minutes, 52 seconds. And before that, the world record stood for 8 months. So, like,
Wow.
whoever American got the 1 day world record, oh, records are meant to be broken. I put this one at 51. Um, this is the most arcadey feeling Ghosts and Goblins
Yeah.
game. It feels a lot less tactical than Super Ghouls and Ghosts on SNES. I find that Super Ghouls and Ghosts, one, um, it feels a lot. The movement feels slower. I think
Yes.
it feels a lot slower and it feels more tactical. It feels like you have to think a lot more about what you're doing. But that was my
Yeah,
experience.
I completely agree that, yeah, you spot on.
Yeah. Oh, I lied. I put this one right below Ghosts and Goblins at 58. So I put those two together, um, and I
Okay.
had a pretty decent time with all of these. I just wish I had more to differentiate on. Um, in my mind, like I can see the differences, but I kind of wish I had more to say about how these games fit in differently. Gargoyle's Quest on Game Boy, July 1990. This game is different. Sean, how about you start? How did
Oh yeah.
you
Uh,
feel?
I loved this game. I beat it in 3 hours. I think Firebrand is much more interesting than Arthur in both his games so far. The boss designs are awesome. Like they really did some crazy stuff. I love the mix of RPG and platforming they did. Like it just kept it interesting. If you beat this when it came out on Game Boy, then kudos to you. Because wow, this has some challenging stuff. But no, I really I'll just it's at number 20. It cracked the top 20. Like
That's
I
great.
Well, I
really,
feel like they
really
agree with you on him being more interesting than Arthur because like the next like 4 games in the series are all starring
Yeah,
not Arthur, but yeah, the demon guy. So
yeah.
so I enjoyed the heck out of it and I did not expect to. I started playing it and then before I knew it on a Saturday morning, like 3 hours went by and I beat it. So I highly recommend it.
okay.
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. This game does have a very unique password system, which you'll probably never get into if you played on NSO. You'll probably just do save
Right.
states. But if you die, you can go back to the town and get the password. I think that's very cool. It's a very cool idea. It's almost I know it's not like a Souls like, but it has like almost that same feel of like you have to like go back to a place to like get to where you want to go from where you were before.
I
Um,
agree, like, the NPCs in the game have a Souls feel to it because even the one that tells you the password immediately says, "And forget it." S
yeah, yeah, it kind of plays on that. This has to be one of the best early looking Game Boy games, and the bar is low. I think early Game Boy are some of the roughest looking Nintendo games. I would say that this one looks like one of the best, and it looks good. Is what I want to say.
Well, keep in mind, like when they were even early developing the Game Boy, they weren't even sure they could do swappable cartridges. They were wondering if it was going to have to be like a Tiger Electronic system where
Mm,
like each one was just a built-in game, so, or the Game and Watch. That's another comparison.
Yeah,
mm.
So,
yeah.
like that's why most there was a big learning curve for them.
So, Harrison, where's it rank before we hear Kevin tell us we're nuts?
I put it at 42 on my list. It's the highest out of the four. And last part I'll add is that Nintendo Life reviewed this in 2011, and the reviewer quote said, "Gargoyle's Quest is almost a painful reminder of how good games used to be, and is a solid indication of how much potential the Game Boy had." Um, I have no idea what this guy was playing in 2011, but I'm assuming he was having a really bad time with whatever games he was playing because he was just like, "Oh, they just did games better back in the day." Uh, so, Kevin, what's your ranking?
um, So I didn't it just wasn't for me. It's not that I think it's a bad game. It just didn't really connect with me much. I ranked it at 72, which is low, but it's still above the part of my list where things turn into bad games. It's right in there with Sin and Punishment, Excite Bike 64, stuff like that. So yeah, it's not a bad game. Those don't start now. Now that we've done so many, the bad games on my list kind of start down at, well, I'd say they start down at like in the high 90s.
Right.
So being in the 70s is still pretty good.
What
One
doesn't
other
click
thing I
for
wanted to
you?
say about the series that I tried looking into is why they changed the title from Ghosts and Goblins to Ghouls and Ghosts.
Yep.
And there's not really a good answer out there, unfortunately, because the Japanese title for these games translates to Demon World Village. And that maintains throughout the G&G games. So
Okay.
I don't know why they changed it to Ghouls and Ghosts from Ghosts and Goblins. I couldn't
Still
find
don't
anything.
know.
So was
And
there anything particular about this that doesn't click with you, or?
No, I mean probably just that it's, an early Game Boy game and I'm looking at in the I agree with everything you guys said for its time it's fantastic, but I'm looking at it in the context of compared to the other games on the list. That's why we have the list. So
That's fair.
so it's for its time it's fantastic and like I said, I don't have any complaints about the game. It's just not my thing. Just didn't excite me. That's the best way to say it. I was not excited.
and on my list now, I don't know where it was when we reviewed it so long ago. Uh, Demon's Crest is now at 55 for me. So if you want like any other comparisons, Demon's Crest would fall right in the middle of the Ghosts and Goblins series for me. But it's been so long. If I played it again, I'd probably put it, somewhere else. Are you guys
Apparently, I
Control
liked
F?
Demon's Crest a little better because I have it at 62. So about 10 slots better than this one.
So I have it at 16. So
Exactly 10 slots, actually, now that I'm looking. Sorry.
both Firebrand games are in my top 20. So,
All
and
right.
I really want the NES one to get added now. The prequel game.
What
Yeah.
about the Super Nintendo ones looked really cool. One of them really reminded me of ActRaiser when I saw it in the history video I watched. It was like there was like overworld parts and then like side scrolly parts and I don't know. They should add them all.
Yeah, bring them all.
Yeah. I totally forgot we had Resurrection. Usually if we would do a series like this, I would say like, what's next for the series? What are they gonna do with this IP? Um, it I think we kind of saw what that was gonna look like with Resurrection, where um it
Yeah, they've
it,
also
it
had mobile games. They've tried
yeah
it all.
yeah like where it seems like it's a pretty fun game, but they're not being very innovative with it, and the interest just isn't there for people who are not familiar with this
Yeah.
IP. So I
We
I
should
I
also mention the Maximo series is related as well, which was a PlayStation 2 platformer. Um, I don't know how to compare it. It's like a Mario
Those were
meets Zelda type game.
Yeah, yeah. There was 2 of those, I think.
Yes, and they started development on a third one, but they canceled it.
Yeah, so Resurrection was to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the series, and it came out in 2021. I think it launched on Switch first.
yeah,
So,
and it was announced at the very odd 2020 Game Awards, which I don't.
yes.
Yeah, so which I probably didn't watch, and I just totally forgot about. Like again, once again, so many times. The Switch has been out so long, and I think I have a good idea of the Switch library, but there are so many games where I'm like, that's on Switch? When?
Yeah.
Like
I think it's safe to say that this is probably gonna go away for a while again, and maybe they'll do something different with it.
They
it's
had a
very tough.
PSP game. Like they've been on and off trying it forever. I wouldn't be surprised if like Sean just said they'll put something out again eventually.
Have they ever put it in some sort of like Capcom Ultimate Fighting? They've never
I don't
put.
think there's ever had a collection of the series now.
New
Wonder why.
character for Smash on
It
Switch
sounds like
2.
something Capcom would do. So,
Well, he's in Marvel versus Capcom. I
Okay.
don't remember which one, but he's in one of them. But no, he'd fit into Smash. Although it'd probably be cooler if they did Firebrand instead of Arthur.
Hmm. They could do both. They got 1,000 characters now.
So what do we got next on the docket? Hopefully just one game.
Yeah, let's see what the randomizer picks out. Sean, this is just for you. It is a single game. You called it. And I think Sean's gonna have a new number one next week. We're talking about Kirby's Dream Course for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. So
Let me just
Sean,
update that now because there's
yeah,
no
Sean,
sense
I don't
in.
think Sean needs to even play it. He can
No,
do his review
no,
from memory.
yeah. So I'll tell you why it's number one next time. But yeah, I'm just gonna add it now.
Yeah, I like it. It's not going to be my number one, but I like it. We'll talk about it next week.
I mean, we've established I'm insane on here as far as my list. So
So
Kirby, of course. All right, it's in there.
join us next week for that. We might be uploading a day later next week because I'm taking a vacation and yeah, you don't need to know behind the scenes, but we'll probably be uploading a day later next week. But other than that, thank you all very much for listening. And if you have any questions, concerns, comments, you can email us nintendotherapypod@gmail.com. Let us know in the comments down below if you're watching us on YouTube. Let us know what your thoughts on the G&G games are. Do you prefer Arthur? Which protagonist is your favorite? Which game is your favorite in the series? Do you think they should keep making games? Let us know down below. Or email us at nintendotherapypod@gmail.com. We're also on Blue Sky at Nintendo Therapy, and those are the mandatories. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a review. Reviews help other people find the show. So leave one, just a quick one on iTunes really helps us out. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.